Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the ratings and reviews tag. So this tag was created by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I was tagged by Mark over at Book Time with Elvis. So we are going to begin. The first thing says tag, folks, and as always, I am way later than everybody else in these. One person I don't think did this that I do mention later on is uh, Erica over from Passage of Time. So if she felt like doing this, you are more than welcome to. But certainly no pressure at all. And as my regular disclaimer in this video, I'm inside my book room in the winter, which means that the heat is very loud. It's not a very well insulated room, but that crackling you're hearing is my heat. Anyway, so I tagged somebody. Now we're going on to number 2. It says, how do you know you've just finished a good book? Is it a thinking or a feeling response? More, it's, I think, about thought for me. If I'm still thinking about it later in a good way, did it leave an impression on me? Did it give me things to consider? Did it maybe, expand my worldview or my understanding? I think I read more for thought than for emotion. I'm not looking for a book to affect my emotions. I mean, if it does, I guess that's good, but it doesn't usually happen at all. That's not why I go there. I go there for much more intellectual reasons. I don't want to make that sound like it's any kind of pompous way. But I'm kind of a cold analytical person in that respect. I just don't go to books for emotional purposes. So it's not really about a feeling. It's about how much is it making me think. Number 3, when you begin to form your review or rating, what is the first question you ask yourself? I think the first question I'd ask myself is, would I read it again? I think that is probably one of the biggest things. Is this a one and done? Is this something that I'll ever go back to again? That's probably one of the first questions that I would ask. And then, could I recommend it? I think is maybe the very quick follow-up question. Number 4, do you do star ratings? Why not? And splitting up into a yes and a no. And it says, if yes, explain your star system. Does a good book get in your rating system? What does a good book get in your rating system? I see. Is your star rating consistent? I.e., are all your 5-star books better than all your 4-star books, etc.? I only use star ratings on Goodreads because that's what's available to me. I don't prefer the star rating at all. I don't really prefer ratings overall when it comes to books. But I use the star rating just because that's what's on Goodreads, but I don't really go by it very hard. Like a 1-star for me is I hated the book. I just didn't like it at all. I couldn't recommend it. I was angry with the book, maybe because I felt like I was being lied to, or the author was being deceptive. That angers me, I think, more than anything. A 2-star read, it's like, yeah, it was okay. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. It's a book that I probably wouldn't end up keeping in the long run. It'll probably end up filtering out of my library, but I didn't hate the book. It was just okay. Largely forgettable. 3 stars, I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll return to it, but I could probably recommend it to other people. I think that would be a 3. That it might also be something that I think has some valuable information in it, but I just didn't think it was well written. So maybe it's something that I'll hold on to just in case. So there's qualifiers there. 4-star is I liked it. I really liked it, and I would probably read it again, and I would recommend it. That would be a 4-star for me. And a 5-star, like, it's something special. It might not objectively be as well written than a 4-star. That's not really what it is. 5-star for me, it's not necessarily an objective rating. It's more like, this is in my library. This is going to stay there, and it's going to have a permanent place because I really found something special in it. That would be a 5-star rating. But like I said, I only use stars for Goodreads, so I mostly don't. So there's also a no part of this prompt. It says, if no, what language do you use to convey the quality of a book in your reviews? Does this form an informal rating or ranking? On BookTube, Yeah, I did try my hand at kind of writing book reviews. Um, on first on like Amazon, then on like Goodreads, and then played around with a blog a little bit. And I might go back and do some of that dabbling. The reason I started BookTube, the channel, was because I found that more time consuming than I wanted. I wanted to be able to write other things and not feel obligated to write down stuff like a book review. And that's why I started just filming it, because it's way quicker that way. And there are way more people who will watch a video than will read a blog. So I could get those ideas down for my own benefit, but I'm not going to get any interaction from that. At least on BookTube, I don't have a huge following or anything like that. I don't have a lot of people watching videos, but I do have some. I do have some engagement, and I've certainly made some connections on BookTube where I can talk books with people and recommendations, and we can discuss our thoughts on things, and that's really what it's all about. So when I'm on BookTube and I'm giving my thoughts on a book, I just try to give my honest thoughts. I take into account what did I like, what did I not like, and I always take into context. I always take into account the context in which the work was created. I try to kind of give it a historical, fair shake, I guess you could say, when I'm talking about something older. Because again, sometimes I read stuff that's older. And the final thing is whether or not I would want to reread or recommend it. Either of those things. And that's kind of what I do. I purposely don't call my discussion videos reviews. I don't see myself necessarily as qualified to give a formal review, especially when it comes to something like fiction. I read a lot of different types of things. Sometimes I'm reading things that I don't have a lot of experience with as far as the genre is concerned, or a subject, and I just don't feel like a review. It sounds almost too authoritarian for me, to use an expression like that. So I call them book discussions. They're just my thoughts, and you can take them or leave them. I don't pretend to be an expert in anything. I'm just on the journey, right? I'm on the journey with everybody else, and I just want to get my thoughts out for my own purposes, and also maybe they'll help out somebody else. So that's kind of how I approach book reviews, again, on BookTube, and it's a word that I generally will avoid. 5. Do you believe every book has its perfect reader? Does this contradict the idea that a book can be bad? I don't think there are enough readers in the world for every book to have a perfect reader. There's not enough readers, period. So no, I think some books are just really objectively awful. I'm not so sure that every book, maybe theoretically, if you had enough people in the world who actually read, maybe you could find somebody, but it's not going to happen. So I'm going to say no. I don't think that every book has a perfect reader. What book that you hated have you recommended? I don't think I've ever recommended a book that I hated. It's never happened. 7. What makes a book good, bad, or great by your evaluation? A bad book, I'm easily distracted by logical inconsistencies. That has affected my reading of books in the past, both in fiction and in nonfiction. If I'm kind of left scratching my head and wondering how one thing led to another, or it feels like the author is pushing something that doesn't feel like it's naturally belonging there, that will kind of distract me. And it might not mean that in the end it's a bad book, but it certainly starts to hurt my reading of it. Typos can affect reading enjoyment as well, but I think I'm more forgiving of those because a lot of times those are outside of the author's control. Ultimately, it's the copy editor that needs to be spoken to. A good book, I enjoyed my time reading it, and I felt that the time was well spent. A bad book I felt like is probably a waste of time for me. And a great book, it made me actually think differently. It affected me and was able to, change me in some way. Or its artistry left a lasting impression on me. I was still thinking about the words and the choices and all that. 8. When evaluating the quality of a book, do you have a specific criteria or aspects of the book, such as character development, that you consider? Does this change if you are writing an in-depth review versus just thinking about the book for enjoyment? So when it comes to fiction, I like a story that isn't predictable. And and I say that, to a certain extent, because I read like Star Trek novels, and that stuff there's a lot of predictable stuff in there, but that's just like comfort food. Um, Even in a Star Trek novel, you can surprise me some. You can give me something that I wasn't expecting. I just don't want to read the first third of the book and then know exactly what's already going to be happening in the last third. I just find that dull. So a quality is a certain unpredictability. And I also like them when they offer insight into human nature, and of course when they're well written. The craft of the writing is something that I'll look for. And nonfiction, I have to think about what did the author intend, and did they fulfill that intention? Was the end result enjoyable? And ultimately, if it's nonfiction, can I trust it? That's going to be a big thing. So those are the types of questions that I ask when evaluating. Number 9, do you consider star ratings or average ratings when choosing books to read/add to your TBR? Not really. Some of the stuff I'm interested in is very niche. You're not going to have a lot of star ratings anyway for it. If I'm curious about a book, I might look up a couple of reviews, look up good reviews and bad reviews, just to kind of get a general sense of what I can expect from the book. But I don't necessarily use ratings to have me choose. A book can have a very high rating, but it just might not still appeal to me or interest me. So yeah, reviews, yes, I'll read a couple of them. I'll check those out, but ratings, I don't care as much about. 10, who on BookTube does reliable and interesting reviews of books that you can use to decide if a book is for you or not? What makes their review so good? Now, this is one of those questions where you could always be cautious or feel weird about, calling out booktubers, and always afraid to leave people out. I will say, I'll mention a couple that I am often very interested because they read nonfiction and nonfiction history. And a lot of times their things that they read coincide with my interest as well. So I'll often, be very curious whatever they have to say about books. So I mentioned Erica from Passage of Time. She always has some interesting books, especially related to medieval history. She's interested in the later Middle Ages. I tend to be more skewed towards the Dark Ages, but I've gotten, written down a lot of titles that she's talked about for my TBR. Mark, Book Time with Elvis, who tagged me in this, we share a lot of similar, I think, interests, and I think we like a lot of the same types of books. So especially when he's talking about something nonfiction, I'm always going to pay attention. Bill Rutenberg, he is also a social studies teacher. So he'll talk about nonfiction from an adult perspective, but also things that could be helpful in the classroom. So I'm always paying attention to him as well. Of course, you got Steve Donahue. He's always got interesting books that he's bringing up in his videos. How prolific of a booktuber as he is, and reader and writer. And I was glad to see that Jason Harrigan recently came back to BookTube, because he's got a fascinating library filled with the occult and history and all sorts of things. And I'm always very interested in his stuff, because I do have an interest in horror, and those are kind of adjacent interests in some ways. Not always, not always, but certainly I think the things that he reads about have influenced the things that I am very interested in. So I do like to trace things back to their origins. So I'm always really interested, especially when he's talking about things like that. So anyway, those are some of the booktubers that when they have a new video, especially if they're talking nonfiction, I'm very interested. And 11, does that or those booktubers use different language than you to evaluate and review the overall quality of the book? I'm not entirely sure what this question means. If they mean other language by something other than English, no. They're all English speakers. They mean by like phrases and words? I don't think so. I think that a lot of the language is very similar. I think all of them are thoughtful, and not just about the book, but also the intentions and credentials of the author. I think they all take that into account, which is something that I really respect and appreciate. And they also will think about whether or not the writing was enjoyable, and I think all of that stuff is, all that is important. So I think that was the last prompt. Yes, it was last question. So, you know, again, thanks to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot for creating the tag, and thanks to Mark over at Book Time with Elvis for tagging me. And that was the ratings and review tag. And as always, thank you, BookTube.